Two decisions from the Supreme Court over the last couple of weeks where so-called conservative justices have betrayed the American people, betrayed conservatism, because they're supposed to be the conservative wing of the Supreme Court, and betrayed the Constitution. I'm Dr. Duke, and this is Constitution Corner. Well, have you been paying attention, America, to what's been going on in your country? The Supreme Court, two decisions from the Supreme Court over the last couple of weeks where so-called conservative justices have betrayed the American people, betrayed conservatism, because they're supposed to be the conservative wing of the Supreme Court, and betrayed the Constitution. You have John Roberts, predictably both times, whether it's DACA or the LGBTQ Civil Rights Initiative. Roberts was the deciding vote for both of those. So the Chief Justice appointed by George W. Bush, boy, did George W. Bush, in retrospect, look like a problematic president. Besides all of his other gaffes and foolishness, his appointment to the Supreme Court of John Roberts turned out to be a poison pill, didn't it? What's happening here is you've got the Supreme Court, which was envisioned by the Constitution. Let me repeat this. The founding documents of the United States created the Supreme Court to adjudicate what is and what is not constitutional. The premise and the purpose of the Supreme Court has been since the beginning of this republic to make sure that government at every level was acting according to the Constitution. You know, it really is a shocking thing how spoiled we are in America. If you look at the founding documents, say, of the United Nations, a phone book-sized series of regulations, that's just to incorporate. When you look at the constitutions or the founding documents of many countries, it is Byzantine how much information, how many codes and regulations there are. I mean, literally, you're guilty of a crime every day without knowing it. What a genius, a set of geniuses the founding fathers were. They gave you a Declaration of Independence that was one page. They gave you a Constitution and a Declaration of Independence that could be easily memorized by school children if necessary. Notice how unbureaucratic it was. Notice how basic it was. But yet, over all sorts of the last 2 centuries, as the courts have gotten bigger and drifted farther left, do you see how much regulation has been added to what the Constitution says? Take, for instance, the DACA ruling. Barack Obama, President Obama, without going through any constitutional measures, created DACA. He didn't get a vote on it. There was no public feedback on it. The way DACA came to be was more or less by fiat. The President of the United States created this program out of whole cloth, completely out of his element in terms of constitutionally what he has the right to do. And now Donald Trump takes over. And one of the things he was elected, Donald Trump, in part to scale back things like DACA and to, for the first time in a long time, protect American borders. And what does the Supreme Court under Donald Trump do? 2 Republicans go with the 3 liberal majority. Now you've got the 2 and the 3. And they decide that, well, DACA may not have been done the right way, or may not even be constitutional. The fact is that the precedent was set by Obama. The precedent was set to give these kids hope through DACA that they would become citizens. And therefore, because the Trump administration didn't consider how harmful it would be to pull it out, we're going to give it legal precedence. I hope you understand the danger of that. A president passes an executive order. A sitting Supreme Court, abetted by 2 so-called conservative justices, decides that while he had no right to do that, it was a mistake, it was not legal, it was not done constitutionally. The fact that he did it is its own precedent, and we're not going to overturn it. That, my friends, is a world-class betrayal of the Constitution. And then you've got the other piece of legislation, which Gorsuch and John Roberts helped to put into place, and that is the made-up idea that way back in the early 1960s when civil rights legislation was being enacted, that somehow they meant to include homosexuals and transgenders in civil rights. Now, there's no evidence for it. It's not written down anywhere. It's not stated. But of course, these two judges joined the third to argue that the early 1960s civil rights legislation did indeed, Title IX did indeed include transgenders who were on nobody's map. So once again, you have a Supreme Court who is inventing rights and inventing constitutional rights for things that were not even mentioned back then. And so what do you got now? A terrible situation where if you're that Colorado cake baker, remember last year, he finally won, 2 years ago, he finally won after all that persecution for not wanting to bake a cake for a gay marriage. He won it when all the Supreme Court said to the state of Colorado, quit harassing him. He has his religious rights. Well, you do know what Gorsuch and Roberts just did. They just hung that man out to dry. There was no formal precedent then, but now you have one. According to Gorsuch and Roberts and the three liberals in the Supreme Court, your religious rights are secondary to the now rights of trans and LGBTQ people. So the next time somebody walks into that baker's bakery and says, I want a gay cake, and he says no, well, the Supreme Court has already decided what that means. It means you're a bigot. The next time the Little Sisters of the Poor don't want to have employees who get birth control because through the insurance plan, because of the faith of the Little Sisters of the Poor, the Supreme Court has spoken out really loud, tough beans. The Constitution is on the ropes. And don't just know your Constitution, live it. This has been Liberty News Hour. As always, you can go to thenewamerican.com and jbs.org for more information on these topics as well as more shows.